The human will to survive, it's honestly on another level. It can literally beat the impossible, especially when you've got that one person waiting for you back home, giving you a reason to keep fighting through hell. Flashback to 1921, Alaska. Meet Ada Blackjack. She wasn't some elite survivalist or a pro hunter. She was just a regular woman with a sick son and a desperate need to pay for his medical bills. That's the only reason she stepped foot on a deserted, frozen island in the middle of nowhere. She started out as a seamstress for 4 male explorers, but that simple trip quickly turned into a total death trap. One by one, her teammates vanished into the ice. Imagine this: 40 degrees below zero, starving polar bears circling your every move, and 2 years of total isolation, living right next to the frozen body of your last companion. How did she do it? How did she survive when the experts couldn't? How did she pick up a rifle and outsmart death itself? This is the breathtaking, insane, true story of a mother's courage that you won't believe actually happened.
The year is 1898. In a remote Alaskan settlement called Solomon, an Inupiat girl named Ada Delatuck is born. Her childhood was far from easy, defined by a constant struggle with poverty. When she was very young, her father passed away, leaving her mother with no choice but to send her to a Methodist mission school. There, Ada learned to speak English, to cook, and to sew like a professional tailor. But here's the thing: Ada didn't grow up like a traditional Inupiat. She wasn't trained to hunt on the ice or how to survive in a hostile environment. She was actually quite shy and soft-spoken. At just 16, she married a hunter named Jack Blackjack, but what should have been a partnership turned into a living nightmare. Jack was abusive, both physically and mentally. They had 3 children together, but tragically, 2 of them died in infancy. By 1921, Jack reached a new level of cruelty. He abandoned Ada and their only surviving son, Bennett, on a deserted peninsula. Ada had to walk 40 miles through the wilderness carrying her sick child to find help. Bennett was suffering from tuberculosis and Ada was broke. To save his life, she had to make the heart-wrenching decision to leave him at an orphanage so he could get the care she couldn't afford. Her only goal in life became making enough money to get her son back and pay for his treatment. That's when a strange opportunity knocked on her door. In mid-1921, a famous British explorer named Vilhjalmur Stephenson came up with a bold Arctic expedition. The plan? To claim Wrangel Island, a desolate rock off the coast of Siberia, for the British Empire. Stephenson hired 4 young men for the job: 20-year-old leader Alan Crawford, Milton Gale, Fred Maurer, and Lorne Knight. But they needed someone who could sew, specifically someone who could make traditional fur clothing, essential for surviving the polar cold. When Ada was offered the job, she was terrified. She'd be the only woman among 4 strange men, but they promised her $50 a month, a massive sum back then. Thinking of Bennett, she swallowed her fear and said yes. On September 9, 1921, she boarded the ship Silver Wave with a cat named Victoria. The plan was simple: stay for 1 year, wait for a supply ship, and head home. When they arrived at Wrangel Island, it was a race to save time. The island was a wasteland of ancient rocks and ice. They found an old abandoned camp left by previous explorers, but it was in ruins. Together, they scavenged driftwood and rocks to reinforce the shelter against the brutal Arctic winds. Ada set up her sewing machine in a corner. For the first few months, things seemed okay. The men mapped the island, and Ada worked tirelessly, sewing boots from seal and walrus skins, gear so vital that without it, your feet would freeze in minutes. But the Arctic weather is a master of deception. They had no idea the horror that was coming. By July 1922, the mood should have been celebratory. A supply ship was supposed to arrive with food, mail, and a way home. Every day they stared at the horizon, but the ship never came. The sea ice didn't melt. Instead, it froze even harder, turning the island into an inescapable prison. As winter returned, their food supplies dwindled to nothing. Hunting became impossible in the blinding whiteouts. In the middle of this crisis, the strongest man in the group, Lorne Knight, was hit with scurvy. His body literally started falling apart. His gums bled, His joints swelled and he became completely bedridden. By the start of 1923, they were at a breaking point. The food bags were empty and the temperature plummeted to 40 degrees below zero. Crawford, Gale, and Maurer realized that staying meant certain death. They made a desperate gamble. They would walk 700 miles across the frozen ocean toward Siberia to get help. On January 28, 1923, Ada watched through tear-filled eyes as her 3 companions vanished into the white void. She was left behind for one reason: to care for the dying Lorne Knight. Ada had no way of knowing that was the last time she would ever see them. Those 3 men disappeared into the Arctic ice, never to be heard from again.
Now, Ada was truly alone on this massive, silent island with the dying man and Victoria the cat. Her life became a living hell. She spent her days dragging heavy driftwood through snowstorms to keep the fire going, and her nights cleaning Knight's decaying wounds. In his pain, Knight lost his mind. He would scream at Ada, calling her useless and blaming her for their fate. It hurt, but Ada never fought back. She knew it was the disease talking, not the man. She made him tea, gave her her own portions of food, and even wrote down his thoughts in a diary so his story wouldn't die with him. At night, when the wolves or polar bears howled outside, Ada sat with a Bible in one hand and a knife in the other. On June 23, 1923, after a long, agonizing battle, Lorne Knight took his last breath. Ada sat in the deafening silence, paralyzed. She was too weak to bury him, her own body shaking from malnutrition. To protect his body from wild animals, she built a wall of wooden boxes and furniture around his bed. Ada was now the loneliest woman on Earth. This was the beginning of her ultimate struggle for survival. After Knight died, Ada had 2 choices: lay down and wait for death or fight. She chose to fight. She knew she had to hunt. Before this, she had never even fired a gun. The sound of a rifle used to make her jump, but she forced herself to pick up Knight's heavy rifle. At first, the recoil would knock her flat on her back, but she kept practicing until she could hit a target. She learned exactly where to aim to take down a seal. Within weeks, she became an elite hunter. She wasn't just surviving, she was providing for herself, hunting seals, white foxes, and birds. Ada was brilliant. She realized that on the ground, a polar bear could tear her apart at any moment, so she used her wits to build a 12-foot-high lookout tower using heavy logs near the camp. Every day, she would climb up there to scan the ocean for ships and keep an eye out for predators. Once, a massive polar bear came right to her doorstep while she was inside. She could hear its claws scratching against the wood. Most people would have panicked, but Ada stayed calm. She grabbed her rifle, found a small hole in the wall, and fired. The bear roared and ran off into the snow. That was the moment Ada realized she wasn't that shy girl anymore. She had become an unstoppable warrior of the Arctic. Even with food and safety, one question haunted her: what if a ship never comes? Using the skills she remembered from watching the elders as a child, she began building a kayak out of seal skins, driftwood, and animal bones. She didn't have a manual or modern tools, just her memory and her will to live. She stitched the skins so perfectly that not a single drop of water could get in. Throughout all this, her only friend was Victoria. She talked to the cat, shared her food with her, and kept a diary to stay sane. She would write, "It's freezing today, but I got a seal. Bennett, Mommy is coming back to you." She kept a photo of her son with her at all times. Whenever she felt like giving up, she looked at his face and found the strength to stand back up. She kept her cabin spotless and her meals organized. She knew that if she let her mind slip for even a second, the isolation would swallow her whole. She had become her own hunter, her own doctor, and her own protector. August 1923. A thin trail of smoke appeared on the horizon of Wrangel Island. It was the rescue ship Donaldson. When the rescuers stepped onto the island, they expected to find a graveyard. Instead, they saw Ada Blackjack walking toward them from her trapline. She was wearing perfectly tailored furs she had made herself. She was thin, yes, but her eyes were full of life. The rescuers were stunned. This woman, with zero survival training, had outlived everyone. When she finally returned home, she became a sensation. The media called her the female Robinson Crusoe, but Ada didn't care about the fame. She took the money she earned, finally got Bennett the medical treatment he needed, and they lived the rest of their lives together, far away from the spotlight. Ada Blackjack spent nearly 2 years on that frozen rock. Where experienced explorers failed, a humble indigenous woman survived through pure willpower. Every day was a battle, and every night was a victory. She proved that the bond of love and the human will to survive can conquer the most brutal forces on Earth.
So, what do you guys think of Ada's incredible journey? Let me know in the comments. If you found this story as inspiring as I did, hit that like button. If not, feel free to hit dislike. And if you're into these kinds of crazy survival stories and uncommon documentaries, make sure to subscribe to Beyond Survival Docs. We've got plenty more stories of human grit and history coming your way. See you in the next one. Until then, stay safe.